Good afternoon and welcome to another live lesson. Today we will focus on main course of Paddinton level, a very quick review about unit 5 and 6 which is focusing on modals, and a very quick and short review of narrative tenses and even used to. Let's start by focusing on modals in English. As you can see on the screen, when we use modals in English, we are referring to three different categories by meaning, which are ability, possibility or probability, and of course obligation, which is the most important one. We go step by step, we review them, we check some examples that I have prepared, and hopefully we'll learn a lot of things today. Let's start by ability. Normally, when we talk about modals for ability, the first word or the first modal that comes to your mind will be can. In present tense, the modal can talks about a general ability that we might have, and equally, or as an alternative, we have be able to, which in present refers to am, is, and are. We want to review all these two styles by some examples in affirmative, negative, and questioners. Alex can swim well, a very general ability that Alex has, and we used can. In negative, Jackie cannot play the piano. And questioner, can she play the guitar? I just remind you that in English, when we want to talk about musical instrument, we use the article the piano and the guitar. For be able to, I'm able to speak 4 languages. We aren't able to make a reservation tonight. The negative, and last one, which is questioner, are you able to understand the homework? But there might be a question in your mind that what is the difference of can and able to? In which circumstances you're allowed to use can, and how can you replace it with the structure of be able to? After reviewing the past form of these, let's say, structures, we'll get to that in a minute. So I'll explain by details in which circumstances we have to or we are allowed to use be able to. Let's go and check the past form of these styles. In past, as you know, can easily changes to could, and be able to gets the form of was and were in sentence. Again, I prepared some examples which are simple, and of course it can be easily understandable for you. Paul could speak French when he was a child. We're talking about an ability that Paul had the time that he was a child. Or the negative, Mary couldn't finish her homework last night. An ability which was incomplete. And last one, could you speak English when you were a child? In third one, I should give a brief information that in this one, we're talking about an ability in the past in question form. As you know, normally we can use could at the beginning of a sentence to make a requestion, a very simple and formal requestion, which is, could you please give me your book? But here, the question refers to an ability in the past in question form. The examples for be able to, she was able to complete the assignment. I wasn't able to finish my test yesterday. And last one, were you able to finish the test? Now, as I promised, we want to talk about the differences that might exist between can and could. As I have mentioned before, there are some circumstances that we are not allowed to use be able to. And that's why we focus on that special ability. A very simple example. I am able to speak 4 languages. I'm talking about a special ability that I have. Speaking 4 languages is not a general ability that everybody might have. That's why instead of can, I make it by am able to, or let's say in general, be able to. The other circumstance that we have to use be able to instead of can is the time that we generally cannot use can or could. How? For example, in this sentence, at the end of the course, you will be able to make your own website. As you can see, the second part of the sentence has got the auxiliary will. And as you know, modal will. And as you know, in English, we're not allowed to put 2 modals beside each other. So because here I can't use the modal can, I use the alternative one, which is able to. So you will be able to make your own website. The same thing can happen for present perfect as well. I have been able to make my own website. So let's review in quick. First of all, when we talk about a specific, let's say, ability that we have, we focus on be able to. And on the other hand, regarding to the structure of the sentence, sometimes we are not allowed to use can or could. And that's why we replace it with be able to. Last note about, let's say, modals focusing on ability is using the base form of verb, the verb after the sentences. First two sentences can clarify everything. After can or could, we are not allowed to touch the verb. It doesn't take S to ing, or even it doesn't show up with the past form. After modals, we use base form of the verb. Next one is focusing on modals for possibility or probability. This section might be the easiest for you because you already know these two modals, may and might, that they show possibility or probability by focusing on present or even in future. I may go traveling next year, I'm talking about the probability, and I might join you if I finish early. Again, I'm talking about a possibility. How will be modals of possibility for the past is something that we will talk about it in next lessons and next videos. Now let's talk about the most important part of it, which is modals for obligation. In English, we can use have to or has to, must for strong obligation, and should for moderate or mild obligation. But before talking about these details on the board, I want to say that in positive, have to and must are not that different. They push the same amount of pressure in both have to and must. But there are some small and tiny differences among them. What is it? For example, have to talks about a general law, a rule, or let's say a push from outside. For example, children have to go to school. It's a kind of a general law that people from Japan to South America should follow that. So I repeat, in have to, we're talking about a push from outside, which is a general law. The other one, which is must, is talking about the same strong obligation, the same amount of pressure, but it is not that general. It can be personal obligation, or even if it is a law, it refers to a smaller community. A very simple example. At a school or at a university, there is a general law that all teachers and all staff should follow. But maybe in my class, there is a rule that in the other teacher's class, we can't find that rule. So it can be must. As I said, have to and must are very similar to each other in positive. But when they go to negative, they are totally different from each other. Because don't have to doesn't have any pressure at all. There is no obligation, and it is just talking about not necessity. So the word, let's say the phrase not necessary is the key word. The example says, I don't have to go to work on Sunday. Why? Because it is holiday. So it is not necessary for me to go to work. There is no obligation, just not necessary. And for mustn't, it is totally different. The same pressure that we had for must in positive happens in mustn't or must not in negative. So when you are not allowed to do something or it is forbidden, we use mustn't, negative obligation. I repeat, you mustn't smoke here. And in general speaking, in common speaking these days, instead of mustn't, they use can't. They say, you can't smoke here. So if we want to review the only difference between must or let's say have to, I should say that it happens just in negative form of them, because mustn't means not allowed, but don't have to means not necessary. So the word not necessary is keyword when you want to talk about obligation in negative form. I mean have to in negative form. Let's continue by more mild version of obligation. Sometimes it happens that you want to talk about you want to give a suggestion, you want to give a piece of advice to someone. So when you want to give advice or suggestion to someone, you use mild obligation in both positive and negative, which is should. You should save some money. That's a kind of a suggestion or recommendation. No pressure and no obligation at all. And in negative one, you shouldn't smoke so much. Again, that's a kind of a recommendation or suggestion from a friend. Let's continue by the other topic that I have prepared for today's lesson, which is a very quick review of narrative tenses, and then we jump to used to and let's say its family. Narrative tenses refers to simple past, past continuous, past perfect, and even past perfect continuous. The tenses in the past that you need to use them when you want to narrate a story, when you want to talk something that has happened to you in the past. But if you remember in first video that we had together, I talked about present perfect, and we said that present perfect is an action or something that happens in the past, but the result of it can be clear, or the effect of it can be clear. In spite of happening in the past, present perfect is never included in narrative tenses. So I repeat, narrative tenses will be simple past, past continuous, past perfect, and past perfect continuous. When you want to narrate a story, when you want to talk about something that has happened in your past, like a memory. We want to focus on used to. We all have got habits. And by using used to plus verb, we talk about habits that we had in the past and we don't have it. I emphasize, the habit that we had in the past and we don't have it now. Look at this picture. This guy used to smoke a lot. Used to smoke a lot. So it means he smoked a lot when he was younger, and now he doesn't smoke at all. So by using structure used to in sentence, I have addressed you to an action that this guy actually used to do in the past, or it was his habit. We all have had a lot of habits, and still we have a lot of habits. I use the example of, let's say, smoking, but maybe we had a lot of good habits in the past. So necessarily used to doesn't refer to bad habits, okay? You can use it for both good and bad ones. What is would plus infinitive without to? Sometimes it counts as an alternative for used to. When you are talking about a lot of habits in the past, sometimes you can replace it with would plus infinitive without to. But there is a tiny difference. When we use would plus verb, base form of the verb, or infinitive without to, we are talking about an action that used to repeat regularly in the past. The word regularly is keyword. Look at the example. When I was a child, we would spend every summer in Bodrum. So going to Bodrum every summer was a kind of habit that regularly used to happen in the past. Again, I repeat, regularly is the only difference from normal used to. Does it have any other forms? Yes, of course. We have get used to and even be used to plus gerund or ing form of the verb. What is it? Imagine these days in your life, you're facing with a lot of activities. You're doing a lot of activities that they are being repeated in your life, but they are not still a habit for you. So I repeat, you are having a lot of activities in your life that they are repeating, but they have not changed to, or they have not turned to a habit for you. Look at the example. My car was stolen, so I'm getting used to traveling by train. These days, I use public transportation to go to work every day, but still it is not a habit for me. It is getting a habit for me. Or the next one, I get used to waking up early in the morning. Again here, we're talking about something which is being repeated in our life, but it has not been a habit yet. I repeat, when we talk about habits, they're not necessarily something bad or a kind of forbidden activity that we used to do and we want to quit it. No, you can talk about good habits in the past as well. These days, you all are staying home. You're facing with the same problem that we all are facing. I hope you take a good care of yourself and you get used to doing a lot of new habits, like studying more, like writing, like searching, like making a better vision for your future. So as many other, let's say, grammar parts, it was short and concise with a lot of information. There will be, let's say, a worksheet for you that will be prepared, and by your advisor, it will be sent to you. Thank you very much.